Hello and welcome to Wellness Influencers, where we bring you the art and science of wellness to discover happier, healthier, and wealthier you. Here is your host, Dr. Kaveh Elahiun.
Good day, viewers. Today we have another fantastic interview. This is my absolute personal favorite, Dr. John Demartini, one of the top human behavioral scientists, researcher, author of over 100 books and articles, a global educator, and a person who has read over 30,000 books, which is absolutely astonishing. Dr. Demartini, welcome.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Sir, this is my absolute pleasure to have you for an interview. Plus, give us a short introduction about you, what you do, where you have been doing it, and we will dive into the questions afterwards.
I guess you could say I'm an educator, a researcher, a writer, definite traveler. I research, write, travel, and teach, a teacher, and I travel full-time around the world to many countries. I think I've been to 154 countries this week in all, and I just do everything I can to learn everything I can about human behavior and human mastery and share my research with people around the world. And I have the opportunity to speak in front of all different types of audience, from government to corporate to general populace to every form of media that's been out there. I think I've done 8,000 interviews, and I love it. So I've been doing it 47 years.
Fantastic. Dr. Demartini, you have a very personal story about how this got all going. Especially it had to do with your high school education. Can you share with our viewers how that started?
Yeah, I had learning problems as a child and speech problems. And I was told in first grade by my first grade teacher that in front of my parents that I don't think your son will ever be able to read, never be able to write, never be able to communicate, never amount to anything, never go very far in life. Because I really did have problems in reading. I couldn't read and I couldn't pronounce words. I started going to speech pathologists when I was a little over one. And I had to wear braces as a child because I had a deformed arm and leg and stuff. So I only made it through elementary school with the help of the smartest kids by asking questions, which was a strategy of survival and a little bit of comedy, I think. Then my parents moved from Houston, Texas to Richmond, Texas, which was in a lower socioeconomic area. And I didn't have a group of kids that helped me, and I ended up dropping out of school, and I left home at 13. So I was a street kid from 13 to really 18. And I hitchhiked out from Texas to California when I was 14, down into Mexico. I was good at surfing. I eventually, at 15, I made it to the North Shore of Oahu and surfed North Shore as a big wave rider. And I almost died at 17, nearly 18. And then I was in the recovery of that experience. I was led to a little health food store and to a little speech at a yoga class. And I met a teacher named Paul Bragg. And one night in 1 hour, this one man with one message really got to me. And for the first time in my life, meeting him, I thought maybe I could overcome my learning problems. It's the first night in my life I thought maybe I could overcome my learning problems and someday become intelligent and learn how to read. And with the help of that gentleman and studying with him for a few weeks, I tackled trying to learn how to read. And it was a slow process, but I eventually learned how to do it with the help of moving back to Texas and eventually seeing my mom and helping learn how to read a dictionary and practice memorizing 30 words a day, the spelling and the pronunciation, the use of those words and the meaning. I grew my vocabulary and eventually was able to go back to school. And then I became, devouring reading and learning once I learned I could. And I guess I became sort of a scholar in the process. And I wanted to learn everything I could about human behavior and man's role in the universe, or the human role in the universe. And so that's just led me in. I was blessed to start having people wanting to ask me questions, and I started gathering students, and it's never stopped.
And you have never stopped.
I've never stopped. We're all over the world now.
Dr. Demartini, let's dive into the mind-body connection and how mindset basically foresets your future and you drive your future. Please give us some details and let us know what you think and what your thoughts are.
Oh, you got about a month? Well, there are various schools of thought. There are some that are monist, that believe that we have a body and that the mind is an emergent function of brain physiology and chemistry. You also have dualists out there that believe there's a mind and body, and they see it as a field phenomenon, possibly. And regardless of the model, and there's bits of evidence for both still, what I'm about to say is applicable, I believe. Regardless of how we perceive our mental faculties, we definitely have perceptions, sensory perceptions. And we definitely have conceptions, which are integration of those perceptions. And each of those perceptions or conceptions can be ones that support what we value in life or challenge what we value in life. Some people have called it positive or negative. But whatever it is, the brain responds neurologically to what we perceive support and challenge us. Support might be a parasympathetic activator, and what challenges may be a sympathetic activator in our autonomic nervous system. And we will have a seeking or avoiding mechanism. You know, like if we look for prey and we want to consume and digest it, that's the parasympathetic. If we were trying to avoid predator, that's the sympathetic fight or flight response. And each of those autonomic divisions create a series of neurotransmitters and modulators and hormones and regulators through the hypothalamus and autonomics that go into the vascular systems and go into the cell walls and activate receptors. And those receptors initiate second messengers that mediate channel proteins and ions going in and out of channels that create a cascading enzyme sequence of either phosphatase or kinase and cause a genetic expression and transcription or a shutdown of those epigenetically, which then produces proteins that are either normal or altered and regressive, that changes enzymes, functions, or structural proteins that are letting us know symptomatically that our perceptions are skewed and polarized to one side or the other instead of balanced in our autonomics. And the symptoms are feedback mechanisms, which we label symptoms. We think it's illness, but it's actually part wellness that's trying to give us feedback to try to get us to balance our perspective and realize that we need both support and challenge to maximally grow and develop. So I'm a believer that the symptomatology of our body has been misinterpreted by a lot of approaches in healthcare. Instead of it being diseases of meaning, we've got it as diseases to attack and get rid of, instead of understand what it's trying to reveal to us. For instance, I'll use an example. Let's say you go out and you have a night where you pig out and you eat too much. And the next morning, after falling asleep on the couch, full stomached, you got a pressure on your diaphragm because you got a little bit of a hiatal hernia. You got congestion, nasal congestion, eye irritation, gas, bloat, cramps, pain in the stomach, a bit of nausea, and some sniffle, almost allergic reaction type symptoms because of leaky gut type. And then you go to the medical doctor, allopathic physician, and they say that, you know, well, you need an antacid, you need an antiflatulent, you need an antihistamine, you need an anti-this, an antibacterial, antiviral, whatever it is. And they're getting rid of all the symptoms. But what those symptoms are may not be illness at all. They may be actually a wellness response, a normal biological wellness response to reveal to you that you're an oink-oinker, you're pigging out. You friggin' pigged out, you fool. And those symptoms are actually to your advantage. And if you learn how to interpret them wisely, they'll give you feedback to let you know how to eat wisely to maximize your performance and be most authentic, and not to exaggerate yourself or minimize yourself and create this leptin, ghrelin imbalances in your physiology. So I believe I'm a full believer. I wrote a textbook, about 1,000-page textbook on 1,000 different health conditions and the psychology behind it. And I really believe that a lot of the symptoms are normal autonomic responses to perceptions that are skewed, that are biased, because we're not living congruently with what we value most and not living authentically. And it's attempting, with the feedback of those symptoms, to get us to do so.
See, you just walked right into our next subject, that how do we value and how do we find out our purpose, our value? How do we focus on it?
Well, everybody lives by a set of priorities, a set of values in their life, whether they're aware of it or not. So it's either conscious or unconscious. And whatever's highest on their value, the thing that's most meaningful, most important, most valuable, most fulfilling, is the direction and expression of what their purpose in life is. It's the most meaningful thing. The ancient Greeks, Aristotle called it the telos. The telos was the end in mind. And it was, in the study of it was called teleology, which is study of meaning and purpose. And so our purpose and the most meaningful thing we can do is to fulfill what we value most in life. What's most meaningful? Meaning means to bring a mean between the volatilities. You know, if you look at the stock market, it goes up and down, but there's a mean average yield. And the mean is the meaning between the two polarities, the sympathetic, the parasympathetic, the pairs of opposites. And so extracting meaning is to be able to find out that whatever the symptoms are, there's a meaning to it. It's trying to get us back into homeostasis, into allostasis. And so when you're living congruently by priority and the highest value, you maximize your purpose, expression, and objectivity and balanced orientation. Objectivity means balanced mind, balanced orientation to perception. And that's where you maximize your performance and your yield of function and fulfillment. But if you're living by lower values and attempting to conform to traditions, conventions, mores, society's ideas and fit in instead of being unique, because you have a unique set of values, you automatically go into lower values. You have unfulfillment, and the amygdala comes in and it wants immediate gratification and wants to avoid a pain and seek a pleasure, and it wants to polarize its perceptions and skew and bias its systems with false positive perceptions, and because that's the only way it can survive. When you're not living by your highest values, you're in survival mode. When you're living by your highest values, you're in thrival mode. And animals in the wild, when they're in a camouflaged environment, it's wiser to err on a false positive, assuming that it's there when it's not, because otherwise it's getting eaten, or it won't get to eat. So it skews and distorts and biases subjectively its reality, and those create symptoms back into the body to try to let the body know that it's not living by its highest values and what's purposeful, and it's trying to get it to live congruently by who it really is. So I believe that symptoms are not our enemy. Our symptoms are our friends if they're interpreted properly. But sometimes we wait so long that they have to really get to our attention to try to wake us up.
So I'm sure you come across people that they say, well, this is the way I am, and they're always anxious. They're anxious about past, they're anxious about future. They just try to control everything. What is a piece of advice you would give these people? How could we reduce our anxiety?
Well, anxiety is usually initiated by an event that is skewed in perception, that you're assuming has more drawbacks than benefits, that you've compounded new associations on that original event, and now a number of things elicit that response in subtle ways. I call it primary, secondary, tertiary, and quaternary associations with a primary event that initiated these anxiety responses. So if you have an event, let's just say, I'm just using an example here. Let's say you go out with a woman and she's blonde. And I'm not picking on blondes, I'm just gonna use this example. But you pick a girl and she's psycho. She's out of her mind. Could be brunette, redhead, or brunette, doesn't matter what color. But you pick this girl and she's psycho in your head. And you think, wow, I don't want to deal with that again. And you avoid that person. You stop. Now you see another lady on the street and she has the same color hair. And you make an association. Watch out. Now, it may not have anything to do with true. It may be completely biased because of one original individual you met. But you now have this anxiety by association in the brain. He goes, a blonde, be careful, or a brunette, be careful. And then you might meet her and she might be a little psycho, and you go, there, I confirmed it. Now I've got a thing. Now I'm walking down the street and there's 20 girls that are blonde in front of me. And my brain registers beware. And I got this anxious response because of association I've made with some blondes. Now this is all just in your delusion, but this is what happens. And so anxieties are subtle, compounded, secondary and tertiary associations made with a primary event that was biased and skewed in the idea of having more drawbacks and benefits stored in our subconscious mind running our physiology.
Wow. So if one gets to that state, how do we do mind change? How do we change our minds from what we have been doing and we haven't had no benefits from, and we want to do something that has benefit fruits, positive outcome, and basically give our life a meaning?
Well, that's a great question. First of all, if I'm going to have to build this, so I'm going to imagine for a second here, Doc, I'd say if I went to you and I said, Doc, you are always nice, never mean, always kind, never cruel, always positive, never negative, always giving, never taking, always generous, never stingy, always peaceful, never wrathful. Would you believe me? Always one-sided.
No.
No. Your bullshit meter intuitively would go off and go, and think of all the times when you were kind of mean and cruel and everything else and stingy. If I went to you and I said, Doc, you're always mean, you're never nice, you're always cruel, you're never kind, you're always taking, never giving, always just stingy, never generous, always wrathful, never peaceful, always negative, never positive, would you believe me? You go, no. Your bullshit meter would go off intuitively and go, no, that's not true. And you think of your positive moments. But if I went to you and I said, sometimes you're nice, sometimes you're mean, sometimes you're kind, sometimes you're cruel, sometimes you're giving, sometimes you're taking, sometimes you're peaceful, sometimes you're wrathful, you would immediately go, yes, I'm certain of that. You can only be certain when you have an objective, balanced understanding of yourself. You can never be certain about polarizations and personas and masks that you try to wear. So the second I go through life and I see both sides of life, I can have certainty in life. But if I'm going through life with a subjectively biased perspective, and I'm infatuated with somebody and I'm conscious of the upside and I'm unconscious of the downside, or I'm resentful to somebody and I'm conscious of the downside and I'm unconscious of the upside, I'm not fully conscious. I have a skewed view. I'm back in my amygdala. And I'm going to seek or avoid. I'll have impulse and I'll have instinct. And I'll be run extrinsically from these misperceptions instead of poised and present from the inside with objective views and seeing both sides, where I'm powerful. If I'm objective and I see both sides, my body brings wellness. If I'm skewed, my body creates illness to try to get me to wellness.
Wow.
So our job is to ask questions that our intuition is attempting to prompt. So if we're infatuated with somebody, our intuition is trying to say, too good to be true, watch out, what's the downside? If we're resentful to somebody, our intuition is trying to point out there's got to be meaning in this, what's the upside? Our intuition is trying to reveal what we've unconsciously deleted in our perception consciously and trying to help us see the whole picture and be fully conscious. And so if we ask the same questions consciously that our intuition is trying to prompt to get us back in equilibrium, we liberate ourselves from the bondage of these misperceptions and empower ourselves with wellness and healing. And so any question that brings the unconscious conscious and makes us fully conscious and allows us to see the side we disowned in our perceptions is powerful. If we're infatuated with somebody, we're too humble to admit what we see in them is inside us. If we're resentful to somebody, we're too proud to admit what we see in them is inside us. So we have disowned parts. If we ask, where do we have those parts, and balance that equation, we level the playing field. We have equanimity within us, not pride or shame, and we have equity between ourselves and others, and that is healing. And that also is the most powerful place to build business and build wealth and to build social influence. And our whole life is empowered by that state of equanimity. So anything that brings equanimity to the mind is liberating to the body and healing to the body.
Wow. Such a profound statement. Now, you and I both agree that if you want to change the trajectory of your life, you have to first change the mind. How do we do that? How do we change our minds effectively?
Well, I think it's not so much we have to change the mind. We have to change our actions, our daily actions to highest priority. If you ask yourself, what is the highest priority action I can do today to help me fulfill what's most meaningful to me? And if you fill your day with high priority actions that inspire you, that you spontaneously love doing, your day doesn't fill up with low priority distractions that don't, which create the illness. Low priority distractions means you're trying to live inauthentically by derivative values of others that you're conforming to. And living by highest values is you're living by enormity, not conformity, and you're living authentically according to who you are, your highest value, your mission, and you're living missionful instead of sitting there living in unfulfillment. And it's about prioritizing our daily actions every day by stopping and asking, what's the highest priority action I can do today to help me fulfill the most meaningful, most fulfilling action and inspiration I can do that serves the greatest number of people? That's a question that Bill Gates asks himself every day. What is it that I can do that can serve the greatest number of people today with the resources I have today? That's a great question. If you're living by priority, your day doesn't fill up with chaos, which leads to a lot of the illnesses that we have. If we live by priority, we get the most done, our self-worth goes up, we expand our space and time horizons, we generate our genius, creativity, innovation, and original ideas because we're thinking intrinsically, not extrinsically. And we keep building momentum and walking our talk, an authentic pathway instead of limping our life. So the highest priority actions is one of the most powerful things we can do to physiologically empower and live. And what that does is changes our belief system, because when we walk our talk, our belief is that what we say we do. And if we're not walking our talk, not living by highest priorities, we're uninspired and we're going to want to escape it. And we're going to go looking impulsively to try to get immediate gratification to escape our unfulfillment. And we're not going to walk our talk, we're going to limp our lives.
So one of the major issues that most of the people have is trying to find their priorities and trying to find their highest values. They're at the midst of confusion as they think they really want this, but in reality, they want something else. How do we find our true meaning and our true highest priority?
Well, I've asked people by the thousands. I was speaking in South Africa, I believe, and there's about 5,000 people in the audience. And I said, how many of you want to be financially independent? And all the hands went up, 5,000 people put their hands up. I said, great. Now, how many of you are? All the hands went down. I said, let me explain something to you. You all say you want to be financially independent, but the real truth is you want to spend money on consumables that depreciate in value and want immediate gratification and want a lifestyle of the rich and famous. And you don't really want to actually buy assets that work for you and become a master of money. So let's get real about what you want, because your life is creating what you really want and you're fantasizing about what you think you want. So you got to get grounded. So you got to look at what your life demonstrates, not what your fantasies and what you say, because what you say means nothing. It's what you live. Your actions speak louder than your words. So I look at objectively, how do people fill their space? Things that they really value, they keep close to them. Things that they don't, they discard. I look at how they spend their time. They make time, find time, spend time on things that are really valuable to them. And they don't have time and they run out of time for things that aren't. I look at what they gain energy on when they're building energy, because when you're doing something you have that's high in your values, your energy goes up. When you're not, your energy goes down. I look at what you spend your money on. You might make money, find money, spend money on things that are valuable to you, and you don't want to spend money on things that aren't. I look at where you're most organized, where you're most disciplined. I look at what you think about, visualize, and affirm inside yourself with internal dialogue about how you want your life that shows evidence of coming true. I look at what you converse with other people about most consistently, want to keep bringing the conversation to. I look at what you are most inspired by that brings a tear of inspiration to you. I look at what you set goals that are most persistent, consistent, and achieved. And I look at what you love learning about spontaneously without anybody having to remind you to learn it. I look for those common value determinants to get a better objective view of what your life is truly demonstrating it's valuable to you. And I have on my website, drdemartini.com, a 13-step questionnaire complimentary to people that's private. No one will see it except them. But please take the time to go do it if you're watching, and do that exercise and do it 3 or 4 times and make sure you're honest with your answers. And it'll give you an idea what your values are in a hierarchy of their values. And then you want to structure your life by living more the highest values and ask, how can I do what I love and get paid for that in the pathway of my highest values? And how can I delegate everything else away? I only research, write, travel, teach. I delegate everything else off my plate. I don't do anything else. I haven't driven in almost 31 years. I haven't cooked since I was 24. That's 41 years. I don't do anything but what I love doing on a daily basis. I've delegated and surrounded myself with people to take care of everything else. The only way you're going to live an inspired life is serving people, doing what you love, and delegating lower priority things. You want to get empowered life.
Incredible. You know what I find quite interesting about one of the talks that you had in South Africa? There was an issue about what you eat. And you mentioned that you eat some grapes after your meals.
Yeah.
I find that absolutely amazing because, and you said it's not a bunch of grapes, it's just few grapes in a cup that you, there you go.
Yeah. When I live on a ship called the World. It's a condominium ship. I've been on there for 18 years now. And they know me. And whenever, no matter what I eat, you know, I may have some fish and some vegetables and some beautiful breads or something like that. But whatever it is, I always finish my meal with 2 grapes.
Incredible.
So they just bring out my 2 grapes. I get the 2 best grapes, I bring them out just to change the palate.
Amazing. Dr. Demartini, we are absolutely happy to have you here. Our viewers, this is Dr. John Demartini. I'm happy to say that you will be in Calgary, Canada in April.
Yes.
So I invite everybody to go to drdemartini.com for the dates and availability. This is a great opportunity if you want to change your mindset when it comes to life, finances, business, interpersonal. This is a great opportunity. Now, the Demartini method, which I'm absolutely in love with. Please give us some breakdown about Demartini method and what we can use it for.
Well, the method has wide application. I really don't know of the boundaries of what it's able to help people with, but it's a series of very precise, concise questions that you can either ask yourself or ask the client if you're a facilitator using it, that allow the individual to take what they think is apparent chaos in their life and transform it and discover the hidden order inside it. It allows you to turn distress into eustress, illness promoting to wellness promoting. It allows you to be able to actually be grateful for things you never imagined you could be grateful for. And what it is a series of questions that allows you to balance the mind. It's a mathematical series of questions that are bringing the mind back into balance. So, like I say, if you're infatuated with somebody, you're perceiving consciously more upsides and downsides, and you're unconscious of the downsides. So this is now asking a question to make you realize the downside so you're not infatuated. Because the second you infatuate with somebody, you'll minimize you, you'll exaggerate them, you'll inject their values, you'll try to live in their values and sacrifice yourself for them, and you'll disempower yourself. At the same time, you could be resenting somebody, and you could then exaggerate yourself, looking down on them, feel you're too proud to admit what you see in them is inside you. And so the Demartini method allows you to see the upsides of what they're doing, so you're not resenting them, so you reclaim your position and humble yourself back. And it allows you to create equanimity, and equanimity and perfectly balanced mind opens the heart, allows you to have gratitude and love, more certainty, more presence. You're more inspired by your life after you do the method. I don't know of any experience that an individual can go through that by going through the method, they can't turn into something they're grateful for. I would say there's nothing the mortal body can experience that the immortal soul can't love. And the method is a way of taking anything that you've ever been through that's stored in your subconscious mind that's skewed and biased and imbalanced, and rebalance it and liberate it so your mind doesn't have noise. It's free. You're centered. It's like a meditation, not having to do the meditation. So it's a method I've been working on for 47 years, and I've used it now, and I've spread it across the world. It's being researched in universities. It's very powerful and has wide application in business, government, corporate, relationship, wealth building. I mean, I've got them in financial institutions are using it, companies. I mean, it's being widely used. But it's a very precise science on recentering, and reintegrating the mind so you're poised and present and powerful and prioritized, purposeful, and more patient in life.
To be honest, it opens a whole lot of conversation here, which I like to get into. But when it comes to Demartini method, there's a way you set one's brain to achieve their best possible goal. What is that connection of mind and body that this method triggers?
Well, you can't have a perfectly balanced mind without having a change in physiology. I've had thousands, and I mean literally thousands of people attend the breakthrough experience. About 100,000 people have been to that program. And thousands of them have reported with emails, letters, sometimes that day of the program, should be days, weeks, or months later, the impact it's had on their physiology and we've had people with psoriasis clearing up stuff for their family perceptions. People have cancers that somehow disappear for some reason. And we've had people with lung conditions, asthma. The conditions are off the chart on people who have done the method and dissolved underlying perceptions and changed physiology. You can't change perception without changing physiology. It's that simple. If all of a sudden the door I don't know where your door is in the entrance of your office, it's in front of you to the left or right, but let's say that door opened up. And let's say all of a sudden a 14-foot tiger came in and leaped across the room and was about to eat you. And you noticed it and you looked up and you saw the tiger with its fangs about to eat you. But I had a Men in Black pen and I pulled up a pen and I stopped it right before it was about to chew on you. But I quickly, as I froze you, I went and did your blood test and I found out that your norepinephrine, epinephrine, cortisol, osteocalcin, your testosterone is just skyrocketed. Serotonin, oxytocin, enkephalons, dopamine are all just bottomed. And you now have this skewed neurochemistry. And the doctor's going to say, well, you've got an imbalanced chemistry. But the reality is you're perceiving in that split moment of a tiger about to eat you, and your body is doing what it's designed to do in 200 milliseconds. And your physiology is showing what's going on from that perception. You can't separate those. You can also take a person and change their body posture and act as if they're doing something a certain way, a facial expression, a movement or whatever, and change chemistry and change attitude. They're inseparably related. I'm interested in helping people get their power back and teaching them how to claim how to change their neurochemistry without having to take an external drug. There's a place for external drugs, but I'd rather give people their power back and attempt to do it as naturally as possible so they don't have to be dependent, that's all. And I think that giving the people that power is what the Demartini method's about, is giving people their power back and helping them see that they have, with their perception, the ability to change their life. William James said that the greatest discovery of his generation is human beings can alter their life by altering their perceptions and attitudes of mind. I've seen it over and over again. I've seen it bring healing. I've seen it change almost every area of a person's life when they change their perceptions. That's my specialty.
So the perception is everything.
The perception of your reality is your reality. If you perceive that, if somebody comes up to you and they criticize you, verbally criticize you, and you perceive, oh my God, they're rejecting me, and you see that, you can be a victim of history, or you can turn around and become master of destiny and go, okay, by them criticizing me, they're humbling me, they're getting me back into authenticity, I'm not communicating in their values, I'm puffed up, I'm a little arrogant, and they're bringing me back in balance, thank you. You could see it from thank you perspective, or you could see it as a victim. If you're holding on to a fancy, everybody's supposed to be supportive of you and praising you, and you have a delusion like that, you're going to be the victim. If you understand that everything is happening to try to get you authentic, you're going to be grateful. You have the capacity to see anything that happens in your life in the way you want it. I've developed work at Keele University where they've done research on grief. I developed a method on dissolving grief in 2 hours. Boom, dissolving it. And at first people go, there's no way you can do that. Well, I've got 3,591 cases documented that I have. Wow. And people go, what? That's not possible. It's all about perception. And you change perception, you change your physiology and psychology. And you don't have to have the ramifications and impact physiologically of prolonged grief. There's no reason for it. I always say nobody has to grieve on this planet more than 2 hours ever again on the planet with this new method. So I try to get people to know about it so they can utilize the tool and not let the world and the normal traditional belief systems run their lives. They have power. We have a lot of power that we don't realize we have.
Dr. Demartini, we are at the third day of 2020, and there is a lot of New Year resolutions made, and we know about 80% of them are broken. What is your advice on people trying to set goals, how to set them, how much of a goals do they set, and how to go about keeping those goals and achieving them?
Yeah. First of all, a lot of the New Year's resolutions are I'm going to eat less and I'm going to spend less because they just overate and they just spent too much because they bought into the traditional belief system of some of these holiday traditions. And they have a transient, temporary motive that usually regulates itself out within a few weeks and therefore is forgotten. Those aren't really, spending your time on that is my opinion, really ridiculous. A real goal, a real objective is something that is truly meaningful to you, that you are already probably working on, that is something that you've been prioritizing your actions toward, that you don't give up on and you don't let yourself down on because it's truly important and meaningful. So I look at what people, I don't waste time on people setting fantasy goals. Most people don't realize that a fantasy is something that's transient, it's not going to live out. But a real objective and a real goal that is really committed, that you're willing to embrace the pain and pleasure in pursuit of it, and it's deeply meaningful, it's high in your values, and you're spontaneously acting on it, that's a real goal. Most people set up fantasies, self-depreciate, and then go around saying, if you want to, make God laugh, tell him your goals. I'm not a favor of that. In my Breakthrough Experience program, I shatter those myths. I try to show them the distinction between a fantasy and a real objective. Objectivity means even-minded, and a fantasy is polarized-minded. It's a pleasure without a pain. It's like if I was to say, I want to be kind, this year I'm going to be kind, I'm never going to be upset, I'm never going to be mean, I'm going to be kind and peaceful and nice. That's crap. That's a delusion. And that's this positive thinking fantasy thing out there. I'm a human being. I have a set of values. You support my values, I can be pretty nice. You challenge my values, I can be pretty mean. My objective is not to be one-sided. My objective is to be a human being, maximizing my performance, pursuing what's deeply meaningful, responding to my misperceptions, using those as a feedback training mechanism to get more centered so I'm most authentic and most centered in achieving the most outcomes. I use everything as a feedback and a metric of my refinement. If I do that, I achieve more in life. And I'm a firm believer of writing out goals. And I'm about to start a program starting tomorrow called Master Planning for Life. It's 3 days of mapping out real goals. The first section of that is training people on what a difference of a fantasy and objective is, and making sure that they know the distinctions and what the physiological responses are. Because if you're having doubt and uncertainty, it is not an objective. If you're having fear about going after this thing, it's not an objective, it's a fantasy. And you're normally designed to have those phobias come up to let you know it's not balanced yet. Once it's balanced, you see it, your executive firm comes online, you have a strategy, you take action.
Dr. Demartini, again, everyone, our viewers, this is Dr. John Demartini. We're going to have an amazing opportunity in April to have him in Canada, in Calgary, Canada. If you can please give us a breakdown of what you will be doing in Calgary for the Demartini method that you have, and generally what do you teach, how many days it is, and basically the breakdown.
Well, I don't know. I don't have my calendar in front of me, but I most likely will do an evening talk on a Wednesday or Thursday night or so there, usually on how to maximize your life. And then I'll be doing on the weekend, usually a breakthrough experience, which is 2 days. It starts at 8 in the morning till about midnight and goes about 9 in the morning till about 7 or 8 in the evening. It's 2 very focused and intense days on maximizing who you are as a human being on the planet. Knowing the distinction between fantasies and objectives, how to set objectives, how to strategize them, how to delegate things, how to prioritize your life, how to not let anything on the outside interfere with what the objective is, how to turn as I described with the Demartini method, how to turn the emotions that weigh you down into fuel of opportunity with love and gratitude and appreciation moving forward. How to not subordinate to outer authorities, to give yourself power to be the authority of your own life. And it's just a very powerful, practical, experiential training system on the weekend. It's not a rah-rah, it's not sitting on chairs, it's not wild music. It's a very powerful transformational experience for people who want to go on and really become masters of their life. I've been doing that program 90 times now in 64 countries this week.
Wow.
So I've been doing it. Over 100,000 people have been through that.
Dr. Demartini, I have had few questions submitted to me. One of the questions that it was submitted to me, and there was few of them, is everybody asked about kids. How do we enable our kids to find their highest priority? How do we embed in their being and in their subconscious that there's a higher level of them that they need to seek out?
Well, Albert Einstein said that the greatest teacher is exemplification. So the first thing to do is live it yourself. Telling people to do something you're not doing is a waste of time. So live it, demonstrate it. Their mirror neurons will pick it up and their chameleon effect will grab it if they see you living it. If you're living an inspired life, they're going to pick it up. I have 3 kids and they're doing what they love doing. It's because I've lived that. So it's not about me sitting there telling them how to live their life. That's foolish. It's their living it yourself in an inspired way. The second thing is to help them by going and helping them determine, no matter what their age, because little kids, you can determine their values. I've got 4-year-olds doing it. I've seen babies. We can observe what their behavior is and find out what their values are. You throw something in a little baby crib, they'll toss it out if it's not valuable to them, and they'll put it in their mouth if it is. So you can tell what's valuable to them. And anytime, if you go look at Terence Tao, for instance, the greatest mathematician in the world, and look at how his mother raised him. He raised him by finding out what was most meaningful, most inspiring, and most powerful, and let him develop around that and linked everything to that. Barnett, the same thing. Jacob Barnett, his same thing. He was at the Perimeter Institute as a teenager with his PhD, advanced studies in physics at a very young age. Physics girl, same thing. At 13, she built her own plane. It's because they found out what they would love to do early, and their parents didn't negate it and didn't tell them how they should be, but found out what it was and then built things around that and assisted them in fulfilling it. So helping them find out what their values are and find out what's really important to them and what they spontaneously love doing, and then helping them look at how whatever they're doing, how it links to that and does that. All the classes they take, how is this class going to help you fulfill what's meaningful to you? Because that's a powerful question. Will expedite that acceleration of their own fulfillment and their own empowerment. So it's caring about the child enough to identify the authentic calling that the child wants to express itself, its gift, its genius to the world, and then not negating it, not telling them they should be this, it ought to be that, and putting all these shoulds on there and imperatives, but allowing them to excel at that. And as it emerges and evolves, it will evolve, but now their brain is trained that I can do what I love and I can serve people with it and I can get paid for that. That's possible. I've been doing it for thousands of people. I'm certain it can be done. So that assists people regardless of age. I've seen amazing things happen. I've got a girl that was 11 years old, had 30 employees in a fashion company because she did that. Another girl that went on to do a Disney deal with $2.2 million when she was 14 because of that. And another girl that's a speaker and works as one of the deputy ministers of Melbourne, Australia when she was 12 and educating children when she was 12. She started when she's 6 in my program and wrote her first book at 7, her second book at 9, and her third book at 12. And as a professional speaker today at 12. So
powerful.
It does. Age is not really, if you get started early, you just build momentum more powerfully. But any age you can get this thing started, but it's just powerful if you get it young, that's all. I was blessed at 17 to get clear.
Dr. Demartini, one of our last questions is, how do we, when we pick a goal, we sometimes lose momentum in achieving that goal? how do we sustain that momentum from the day we choose that goal to achieve? How do we sustain that momentum?
If you're giving up on your goal, it's not priority. That's simple. I've been doing what I do for 47 years. I've been inspired 47 years on a daily basis. You can ask anybody that's known me. You can ask any of my kids. They're here. You can bring them in. Have you ever seen your dad not inspired by going out, researching and teaching? And they won't be able to tell you anything but yes. That's all he does. That's his life. Okay. So you don't give up. You don't slack. You don't, distract from something that's truly valuable to you. You only distract from things that you think are valuable that aren't. So if you really have something that's deeply meaningful, you don't waver from it. You get onto it. You may have a few challenges, but you don't stop, because when something's really high in your values, you love challenges. If you don't fill your day with actions that inspire you, it fills up with actions that don't. If you don't fill your day with challenges that inspire you, it fills up with challenges that don't. And if you target the things that are truly meaningful, you won't need outside motivation. If you have to have any form of motivation on the outside to do what you say is important, it's not important to you. I don't need motivation to do what I love doing. And I delegate anything that I need motivation to. I let other people do that crap.
So basically be able to delegate things that doesn't inspire you and it doesn't align.
Yeah, why? You might as well delegate anything that's not inspiring to you. Why not? If you're doing what you love doing and you're serving people doing it and you're getting handsomely paid to do it, you can afford to delegate anything less. And you can prioritize your life to say no to things that aren't inspiring to you. How are you going to live an inspiring life saying yes to things that don't inspire you? No way.
Absolutely.
So I don't waste my time on that. I fill my day with the things that are inspiring.
Dr. Demartini, this was absolutely a pleasure. Our viewers, our listeners, this was Dr. John Demartini. He is the world-renowned human behavioral specialist. Fortune 500 companies have had the pleasure of having him speak to them. He has read over 30,000 books. It just blows my mind away. And he has developed many disciplines, programs that help individuals, companies, financially, emotionally, behaviorally. If you need any information, please go check drdemartini.com. He's coming to Canada, our Canadian viewers. He's going to be coming in April. Please make sure you go and check the website out for the dates. Dr. Demartini, I thank you for your time. In closing, if you have anything to give us pointers, please go ahead.
But just whoever you are, wherever you are, you want to give yourself permission to do something extraordinary on planet Earth. The real authentic you is magnificent. And any fantasy you impose on yourself is less than who you are. So don't waste your time trying to be somebody you're not. Just give yourself permission to be who you are. Say no to things that aren't inspiring and say yes to things that are. Learn how to say no to people that are opportunists, that are trying to vie for your attention and trying to impose their values on you, because everybody's going to try to impose their values on you. You got to be able to be true to yourself. That's why knowing yourself and being willing to be yourself is the way to love yourself. And you don't have to get rid of any part of yourself to love yourself. You got both sides. I'm a hero and a villain. I'm a saint. I'm a sinner. I'm a virtue and vice. I don't try to be one-sided. That's a moral, narrow-minded thinking. I'm a human being. I got all the things. I need them all to get my mission fulfilled. So give yourself permission to do something extraordinary as an extraordinary individual that you really are. And prioritize your life every day. It liberates you, and delegate all the things that are not inspiring to your life onto people who would be inspired to do it. So you give the economic growth that we all deserve.
Dr. Demartini, thank you so very much. We appreciate your time and your dedication to this interview. Hopefully we will see you in another perfect time.
I look forward to it. Thank you.